Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I forgot your name.
Lucia.
This is Lucia. Lucia is a journalist in Italy, and we kind of just met the other day because I was doing stand-up and talking about trans issues, and then she approached me to talk about LGBT, trans-related issues as it relates to Thailand and also Italy.
Yes, the fact is that I'm like new in this world, and it was very interesting because I heard that here in Thailand, it's more or less, we could say, like different. There are many differences between Thailand and West, and so I was interested to understand what are the main differences and what are the feelings of transgender people living here in Thailand compared to US or Western.
Yeah, totally. So where would you like to start? Should I just say some things?
Just tell me a little bit shortly your experience, your life, where you come from.
Oh yeah. So I've transitioned for about 5.5 years, I think now, and I started in San Francisco. I moved to Portland. I then lived in Berlin for a couple years. I did some travel in Italy and France. I'm out here in Thailand just traveling, having a good time. I've had facial feminization surgery, and I've also had breast surgery, and then I have bottom surgery scheduled in September in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
One of my kind of biggest problems in living in Berlin was actually getting the German healthcare system to cover my surgery costs, which they basically didn't. So I moved back to the United States, and I'm going to have my surgery covered by my health insurance out there. So it seems like it's just a better deal for me.
Mm-hmm. How much does it cost more or less in the US?
For what?
For the transition, for the low part.
Oh, for bottom surgery? I don't know. I'm going to guess just at least $100,000 because it's a very intense surgery. But I don't know because healthcare is just going to cover it. I never discussed a price with the surgeon. Mm-hmm. It was just like, yes, you have the right healthcare provider, so you don't need to worry about it. But when you get things like facial feminization surgery, which is really important for a lot of trans women, because if you look visually like a guy, or you feel like you look visually like a guy, you could be unsafe, you may not feel good about yourself, that kind of stuff. But oftentimes it's superficial, and so it's not covered by a lot of insurance companies. So yeah, I flew from Europe back to America to pay out of pocket for my surgeries, and then back to Europe. And I'm like, why am I paying taxes and not getting health care? So.
And did you know that in Thailand, as far as I know, it's not so expensive?
Yeah, so Thailand was something that I thought of, but it's a little less accessible for me because the doctors, you may know of them or you may not. It's not very easy to access because it's not in English. I'm sure there are some, and there's a bunch that advertise it. But the thing I felt nervous about is that I didn't really know the surgeons very well. The American one that I went to had a really good reputation. I knew people who had surgery, and I had the money to be able to do it. If I did not have the money to do it, I would probably have considered coming here because it would be a lot cheaper. And I did do some research on some places, but I just didn't go through on it because I had a direct connection to what I would consider a safer surgeon, though who really knows. Like, yeah.
And in what moment of your life you realized that your feeling didn't correspond with your appearance?
I think I started to get signals when I was like 12, 13. I started to feel like as I was going through puberty that it was not what I wanted, but I wasn't sure if there was anything I could do about it. And I didn't have a language to communicate it or even make it tangible to myself. So I just had this feeling that was ambiently around me. And I remember looking in the mirror and imagining myself as a girl and just kind of wanting that, but not really having a language to express that or feel like it was a valid thing to even express that want. So instead, I just kind of was like, well, I'm a boy, so I can't do anything about it. And then once I was much later in my life, when I was 32, I have a career, I have income, I'm living on my own, I have independence. And I go, okay, like there's this part of me that has kept having this desire. I really should look into this a bit more because if I don't, I'm gonna keep wondering about it. And it's clearly not going away. I'm 32, it's been 20 years, I'm still thinking about it. I should get this answer now because if I'm a woman, it'd be better to know now than it would be when I'm 62.
It's true, and it's amazing because I don't know you, but I feel this like it's so good to see that people could just speak without any problem and to pass through this process, which could be very difficult for some people. And I think that your experience is very helpful and useful, and it is a very good example for other person who is passing through the same thing. So I think
that's my hope.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And how could you pass through it? So I don't know.
Gracefully. There was no grace. There was no grace.
There is no grace.
You're just falling down the stairs, and you're like, oh, God, this is horrible.
It was hard.
Yeah,
right?
it was really hard, really hard. And that's why I make my videos, because I know that it would have been great had I have had someone like me to kind of help me through my own process. And there's a lot of YouTubers out there. There's a lot of social media trans people. But I've not found a lot of thoughtful, like inner reflection, personal development. It's more about like how to look and how to pass and how to be attractive, and less about like how to work through your harder stuff inside. So that's what I focus on. And, I used to be a Lifeline call center person, so I'd pick up the phone and answer, Trans Lifeline, how's it going? And you know, a lot of people were at very, very low points in their life, sometimes, you know, wanting to kill themselves. And so, like, that's where I kind of learned a lot more about just, like, how much support people need.
Sure. I think that people, not only LGBT and trans person, but in general,
we all need support.
We all need support, and we all need to speak and to know much more our inner self. We all need it.
Yes, we all need it. Like honestly, it's generally a problem for everyone.
Yeah. So, what are the main problems trans person faces during this shit?
There's so much. Well, so I wrote a book on it, on the internal part. But if I were to just say, like, here's kind of like the list of all of the things. There's the first part, which is like coming to terms with what you are starting to realize, like that it's actually happening or that you actually are this way. And then once you kind of start to realize that, you then have to kind of start making some decisions about how you create alignment with your inner world and your outer world. And as soon as you decide that you want to create alignment with your inner world to the outer world, that's when all the problems really start to grow, because first of all, you've got your inner demons, right? So there's a concept, it's called inner transphobia. So it's like transphobia, it's like people afraid of trans people, homophobia, you know? But like we have transphobia inside ourselves. And so as you're trying to accept yourself, you're also rejecting yourself. And so there's a battle going on inside. And when you start trying to change things in the world outside, you've now started a battle outside as well. So you have a battle inside, you have a battle outside, and they could be going on at the same time. So it kind of makes it very hard to kind of like climb at this mountain, because like it's like you're a mountain climber, but you don't believe you can do it. But you gotta climb the mountain. And so you're like, like I don't know if I can do it. And there's someone at the top of the mountain saying, "You suck. You can't do this. Give up. Kill yourself." And you're like, "Fuck. Like I'm not a mountain climber. Maybe I can't do this." And you're like, "No, I must keep going."
And that is the crazy process happening in our brain, in our mind, I think, in every difficult moment of our life, not only for transgender people, LGBT people, but I think for everyone. I think there is this fighting, like you're a shit, no, I have to go, I have to do, but yes, you have to change inside before.
So I think like the difference, or like how I would frame it, is that everyone has this problem of like believing in themselves, striving, like moving forward. Trans people have the same problem as everyone else, but then you have more problems stacked on top of it. So like a regular person has, let's say, 10 problems. When you're a trans person, you have 10 times 5 problems. It's like your problems are multiplied, because just going to the doctor and being recognized for what you are, you have to fight them now. Based on your identity, you have to fight an entire system that is designed to not allow you to do what you need. And there's concerns, right? Like people, like the institutions will have concerns about, well, we don't just want to hand out hormones, right? Like you need to have some psychology, this kind of stuff. Some of the decisions you make are like life-changing and are irreversible, like bottom surgery. So there's like checks and balances in place, but oftentimes it feels like the system is not really wanting you to make progress. Like when I was in Germany, I had transitioned for like 2.5, 3 years, and now that I'm in Germany didn't recognize any of that. So I had to start the entire process over, and I had to go find a doctor, a psychologist who would diagnose me as transgender. So I had to find someone who would do that, and then I needed to be with a psychologist for another full year every week to talk to them, so that they could then say, I am for sure transgender, and then I can start the process for getting bottom surgery. In America, I went and I paid a psychologist $100, and we had an hour talk, and then they wrote my letter, and that's all I needed. I need 2 letters, so I had to do that twice, but it didn't take me a year. So the systems in America are actually a lot easier, depending on what state you're in. In some states it's harder, but Washington, California, where I've done my transition, it's been a lot easier. So like, kind of like, there's just a million different steps, and the way I would kind of describe it is it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So there's like all these little things that are just cutting you everywhere you go. So you go to, let's say, you just go to the grocery store, and the person at the grocery store calls you sir when you're a woman, or the other way around, right? When you identify as a man, but they call you ma'am. And like, you think, okay, it's just like a small thing, like it's just a word, right? But it's like, it's playing with that part that's inside of you, and it's like impressing upon you, no, you're not who you are, you're not valid in how you want to be. And there's like all of these layers, that internal piece, and then there's the healthcare system, there's financing it. So like I invested in the stock market, the stocks that I sold paid for my surgeries, and like had I not had the money to invest and like pay for those surgeries, I would have been shit out of luck. There's no other way for me to get my surgeries. So there's like a huge financial component and a big cost to it as well. yeah, I mean, there's just like a million. My entire channel is about all of the problems that you have as a trans person, and it's just very long. But if you want to talk about, like, let's say, like, what can a government do? I think, like, a government needs to have, like, a healthcare system that is supported and educated about these issues. Like, okay, so if someone looks a certain way, or they're trying to present themselves in a certain way. Like if I'm wearing a dress, but I look like a guy, but I'm still wearing a dress, I'm probably trying to go for something. You might want to ask me what my pronouns are. Mm-hmm. Something so simple as that can make it mentally a little easier to process. Mm-hmm. If someone is wanting to use their name, like if I have my legal name and it hasn't changed to the name that I want to use, letting me call me Lucia rather than call me my legal name, you know? That kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how do you feel here in Thailand? Is it really
great.
a LGBT friendly country, or it's like a kind of marketing?
A marketing ploy?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that it has been incredible. Now, I mentioned this in my stand-up that I pass. And so a part of that is that sometimes I may not know, because when I walk around, people can't tell necessarily. So I don't get people shouting at me or any of that. But I have told people, I've told like massage therapists, physical therapists here. I have interacted people in the medical system, as well as just like regular folk, and I have outed myself, and they've been very accepting and supportive. Mm-hmm. And I have felt, I was thinking this when I was here maybe 4 days ago, I was just thinking that this is probably like the easiest place that I can be trans. Yeah, I think, I don't know, it might be in the world. It's just because like the lady boys, they've kind of made some progress here, and people are just like, yeah, lady boys exist, like that's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's not strange. So when they see a trans woman, or when I out myself as a trans woman, they're kind of like already okay for that. Yeah, I think lady boys are kind of a little different than trans women. Some of them identify as women, some of them identify as lady boys, some of them...
What is the difference between lady boys? Sorry.
Yeah, this is a good question. Yeah, well, so I can't speak on behalf of all lady boys, but like what I have understood is that there's different kinds. There's people that want to become lady boys so that they can be a lady boy. And there are some people that become lady boys just because they can make money. And then there's some people that are just being called lady boys, but they're actually just women, and they're just trans women. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of like the main categories that I've seen. Mm-hmm. I think that my noticing of lady boys, the ones that I notice the most are the ones that are like overperforming their femininity a bit more, like almost like a theatrical sense. Mm-hmm. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're doing a podcast. Yeah.
At the beach podcast.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
I do podcast too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are thinking about dinner around here.
Okay, great.
There's a special Italian.
That sounds
Have you been
amazing.
to, Cafe Del Mocha?
No, I've been in Coco Loco.
They might say it's maybe number one, number two, it's rival.
I'm 100% down.
You're down, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, so ladyboy, ladyboys, yeah. And I think that I've, in some ways, benefited from the existence of ladyboys here, not just because of more acceptance, but also actually because some of them are kind of, some of them are just like straight up women, and they're women, but some of them are like, I wouldn't say they act as much as what I would expect a woman to act as. And it's totally fine to identify as a woman and you don't completely act like a woman, but sometimes I feel like they're a bit different. And so I would say, yeah, you have the lady boys who are actually just women, and then you have the lady boys who are lady boys, and then you have the people that become lady boys just because it's profitable to be a lady boy.
Okay, I have a lot to learn.
Yeah. It's a bit more like, I think in the Western world you have a little less shades of gray around this, because you just have trans women, trans men, and then people who are non-binary, gender fluid, and then cis men and cis women. But like you add lady boys in there, and you kind of have a new segment that is like its own kind of thing that kind of bleeds into these other areas. Yeah.
So besides the fact about how people interact with you here, and besides how much they are relaxed concerning these topics, so what other differences you noticed here in Thailand compared to Western?
As it relates to being trans?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm ever going to be in danger. Like that. I mean, that's a big one, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm ever in danger of anything here. When I was in Eastern Europe, I felt like I was in danger at times. In Italy, I didn't feel like I was ever in danger, but I feel like if I was running into the wrong Italian guy, it would not be a good story. And I feel like the only guys that I have to worry about are the tourists, the tourist guys, like the Russian guys, or maybe the Israeli guys. I don't know. There's a lot of Israeli and Russian guys here, and I don't know how accepting they are of trans people. So,
how do you interact with them if you cross with them in your daily
I mean, if
life?
they're hot,
Right?
yeah. I mean, if they're hot, I'm gonna start interacting with them. That's for sure. But depending on how safe they feel, you know, like if things progress, I'm gonna have to find a safe time to tell them, you know, like, hey, like, you know, like, just so you know, FYI, I avoid them too. Like, for example, the reason why I'm over here is because over there near the volleyball spot, there was like, where I sat down, there was like 12 Israeli bros, and they were very loud and very bro-y, and I was just like, I don't feel comfortable close to that energy, because groups of guys, especially when they're younger, they like to kind of hit things, and like when they're very like loud and kind of asserting their space, and I'm next to them and I'm trans, it's like I don't really want to be around that energy. I'm just gonna remove myself, and that's probably the most like negative, if you even want to call it negative, just interaction I'd have, is just like, okay, I need to avoid this area. And in Copenhagen, there's like so much partying and such a party vibe. Like there's just, on the full moon party night, I stayed inside. I didn't want to go outside, you know. But I think that's just generally, some people just don't like that. So
maybe.
Yeah.
I've heard that here in Thailand they are thinking there is a process going on to recognize the
trans women and trans men.
Yeah.
That's the part that surprises me, is that they don't accept them legally as women and men, and that like the Muay Thai the trans woman boxer is in the ring boxing men. Which is just like, it blows my mind. But hey, she's doing well, or she did well. I think she might have retired, but like, you know, if she's fine boxing men, I guess that's fine. I was just kind of surprised to see a trans woman in the ring boxing guys and beating them. So I guess that's, you know, maybe that's okay for like, maybe that's a lesson to be taken into the Western world, is like trans women can still fight in men's sports. I don't know. But yeah, I was surprised about the legal recognition. It's not here.
They are trying to recognize also the weddings between people of the same sex.
Oh, right. They don't recognize
they didn't
gay
recognize
marriage,
yet, but maybe they will. It's still in progress. So let's see what will happen.
Yeah.
Could be interesting. So from your point of view, from your experience, what are the things you would bring from here into our Western countries?
Oh, if we were to like improve the Western countries, yeah, I think accessibility of like the healthcare system is huge. People make decisions, like trans people make decisions on where they live based on the healthcare they can get. So if the healthcare is supportive and it's accessible and it's clear, like people are surprised all the time when I tell them I left Germany because the healthcare wasn't good, and they go, "What are you talking about?" Like, I've heard the healthcare is great in Germany, and the healthcare is great for 80% of the cases and what needs to happen, but that 20%, it's not that good at all. And I remember spending so much time being confused. People I would ask didn't know the process, and so I would say, if you were like the health insurance company, I would say, "Hey, health insurance company, how do I go through this process?" And they would tell me one thing, and then I would go to someone else and they'd tell me another thing, and then they said, "Oh, you forgot to do this thing." And so you just get lost in like this paperwork process, and I don't speak the language well enough. And so I think having a clear path to, okay, I'm trans, I need the healthcare support, help me work through this so I can get the support that I need. If there's just a path that's clear and established through the healthcare system, and then with like changing your passport and your identification and all of that, like the paperwork should be simple and easy to do. It shouldn't take like a super long time to do that, and it shouldn't take a lot of effort. I remember when I changed my UK passport, it was the easiest thing ever. I took one form, I just like checked another box, and then I sent my passport and it came back with a different gender. In the United States, I had to go to the California court and I had to submit a bunch of paperwork and I had to stamp it all these times, and I had to figure this out and that out, and it's I'd attach paperwork to prove that I was changing gender and stuff, and so like making that easy as well. And Thailand doesn't do that, but like, you know, that's something that would make it very accessible. I think it's also a cultural shift. Like, can you exist in public spaces and feel safe? And that's the big one. And visibility is a big part of that. Like media visibility, like just having people who are successful trans people being visible. Like, it's not just about trans people who are like, "Oh my God, I'm poor and I'm ugly and I can't make it and this is shitty." Like, unfortunately, that is a part of the trans experience, but it's not the only part. And like, we have to also just see them as humans and not just like a source of comedy and laughing at them. You know what I mean?
Sure. Do you think that in our societies, in our Western societies, do we need more protections towards transgender people, or do we need more to speak more, as you said, no, to make it more normal in the daily life?
You know, like, I think there's a lot of like advocacy that exists now about talking about being trans and like getting a lot of visibility, which I think is good. But I think like ultimately we just need to arrive at a place where we can just say they're just wanting to be who they are, and a trans woman is a trans woman, a trans man is a trans man, and it's really just a man and a woman, so just treat them as a man and a woman. They don't really need to have special privileges or anything like that. They just need to be treated as how they identify. I think there's nuance to that sometimes. Like, I was listening to a friend talk about how there was a guy in the UK who got sentenced to prison, and then he said, "Oh, I'm a woman, I'm a trans woman, so I shouldn't be sent to the men's prison." And like, that guy I don't think he had any prior history of being openly trans or anything. And so when you like enter this world of having a label and identity, and when people can just say, "This is who I am," suddenly it kind of does shock the system a little bit. And like, I think in that solution for the prison example, like, if you are a trans woman and you're going to jail, like, give me some kind of evidence of like your past few years. You should probably have come out. You should probably be you don't need to be taking hormones, but maybe you should have taken steps to show that you are actually a trans woman. Because if you just put the hat on and say, oh, I'm a trans woman because it's convenient, I think it undermines trans women, and it undermines our entire cause of what we're trying to fight for, which is just to be treated as equals. But when someone can just co-opt and steal our, like, what we work hard on just being, like, I'm just trying to be a woman, right? But now this person's pretending to be a woman, and now, like, there's a debate about, like, well, can trans women be women? Because if they could just put a thing on, then, you know, like, I think there needs to be, I think what people need to know is that we can't just, like, jump from one conclusion to another, like these extremes. Like, okay, so trans women need to be accepted, and trans men need to be accepted as men and women, but it doesn't just mean if a guy goes to jail and then says, oh, I'm a trans woman, we need to respect them and be like, oh, you're a woman, we now need to put you in a woman's jail. It's like, wait, hold on, like, have you been identifying as a woman? Do you have any evidence to suggest that you actually have? Like, where is that? Because you need to, in my eyes, you need to prove that you are a trans woman rather than, like, just say the label and that's it. So I think there's, like, nuance in terms of, like, how we communicate and think about this, because there's a lot of backlash against trans women and trans men, mostly trans women, because a lot of people seem to get on the whole, like, we have a penis or that we were men at some point, and that seems to be a bigger threat than the women who decide that they want to be men. Like, that doesn't seem to be as big of a deal, except I think in Iran. I think in Iran it's a little different, because you're not allowed to be gay, but if you transition to be a woman, that's okay. But women can not transition to be men, because then they get an elevation of status, and that's not approved. That's not okay.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy.
Yeah, that's not okay. So, you know, there's nuance there.
And how is the LGBT community here in Thailand? Did you get the chance to know other person living here or traveling here?
I've not met any gay people. I've met some ladyboys here and there, but yeah, no, I haven't had much interaction with them.
It's just to understand if there are many, as you know, a lot of time Thailand is sold around like a destination also for gay people.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's true or it's like marketing.
I think it's true. My uncle is gay, and he was out here with his partner, and he had like 12 gay friends, and they were all just like having a drink, eating food, and hanging out. So I guess, like, for them it was their destination, and yeah, I think that was the most gay men I've ever been around. Holy shit. But it was fine. Like, they seemed to enjoy themselves, but that's about it. Like, I actually don't hang out in gay circles, and I don't hang out in LGBT circles, like, except like trans women. I seem to have more trans women around me, but yeah, like, not a lot of exposure.
You said a very interesting thing a few minutes ago, to be who you are.
Yeah.
What is, I think, the main important thing for everybody, we could say, for trans person, but in general also for, how do you define, I don't want to define normal person, for how do you call me?
What do you mean, a person?
A person like no homosexual.
So some people call cis women.
How do you
cis, CIS.
CIS?
Yeah, cis
I've
women.
never heard about it.
Yeah, cis women, or another way of doing it is just assigned female at birth, because it's saying, okay, a doctor said you're a woman, and at birth you're a girl, and they assigned it to you, and so, like, I was assigned male at birth, but I didn't have a choice, so now I'm assigning later female.
A little bit later.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Here I am.
A lot later. Yeah. Yeah. So what was the question?
No, it was just a reflection
Yeah.
that the most important thing is to accept ourselves
Yeah.
whenever you are, whenever you want to be,
Yeah.
and to be who you are. Because
Yeah. Well, so I have thoughts on that, which is when if you're a cis woman or assigned female at birth, you don't have to accept that you're a woman, which is kind of a bigger thing, because that's like a bedrock of like how you assign your personality, your expression, all of that. You don't have to audit that or change that. You can. So there's some women that I know who are like, I had to reconfigure my own understanding of what it means to be a woman, right? So there is a level of accepting there. But I think there's a kind of like a bit more work. You have to dig a bit deeper when you're like a trans woman or a man or a trans person, because you have to dig past the first layer of what you've been assigned.
Sure.
And then you have to get to the next layer. And like I mentioned earlier, the world may not accept you. And if you've got work to do as just a cis woman saying, okay, well, like, I'm gonna accept my womanhood in this way, people are gonna look at you and still see you as a woman, and they're not gonna care what you're dealing with internally. But if you don't look like a woman or you don't look like a man, they're gonna treat you in a way that's not helpful for you to accept yourself. And so accepting yourself is a much harder game when people keep filling your hole. You're digging your hole,
Sure.
and people keep filling it with sand. And you're like,
Sure.
come on, like I'm just trying to get to the center. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
What do you suggest? Some, I don't know, for acceptance. I mean, meditation.
Meditation is huge. Psychedelics have been a part of my journey, like mushrooms, LSD, MDMA. Those things have been a part of accepting myself because they have, in my opinion, nootropic properties. They can enhance certain parts of your own cognition if done in the right therapeutic setting. And I've found that MDMA helped me melt through the sharper friction parts of my consciousness, and LSD helped me process disparate parts of my mind that I wasn't able to work through. Therapy is often a common way that people work through it, but I didn't find therapy to be very effective because I'm an action-oriented person and I don't want to just talk forever. So I journal. I found journaling to be very helpful too, because I think when you're dealing with a lot of intangibles, writing it down into words can help you make the things that you're battling with more certain and more clear. And then you can step away from the internal dialogue and say, oh, I can see how these things are kind of working. That doesn't make any sense. I can't believe that's just happening there. So like journaling is a big one. And then having friends that accept you, because there is an aspect to performing your gender and being visible. And when people see you as how you want to be seen, you can kind of become that thing that you want to be seen as. And if people are seeing you not as how you want to be seen, then it's the reverse. So having building a friendship network, tapping into community. Oftentimes trans communities are going to be the most accepting of you being trans. Sure. That's not always the case. If you, some older trans women who consider themselves not so attractive have felt rejected by the more attractive passing trans women. So there's still like cliques within that like system. So it's like, it's not all equals. So there's that too. Money. I think money is a big one. So like job security, that might be one that's worth considering for like a government, is like job security as it relates to being trans. Because if they have in the United States stuff in place to say you cannot discriminate based on gender, but like does that also, can you not discriminate based on if you are transgender?
Sure.
You know, or being fired because you're transgender now? Like that kind of protection is pretty important, because if you can't make money, then you can't really exist in this world. It requires money. So
Sure,
Yeah.
it's a lot of aspects that we usually don't think about.
Yeah.
Like the importance of money also in this kind of situation. Money is important to realize what you want to do in your life, of course, but especially in this situation, it's fundamental.
Yes.
It's changed a lot.
yes,
It gives you the opportunity to go, to follow your process, or just to stop.
yeah, you can't afford it.
You can afford it.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah,
I would have a lot of questions more.
yeah. Do you have more questions?
How do you interact with men who knows for the first time? This is my curiosity.
How do I interact with men? Oh my God, I talk about this.
You talk about,
I
me
talk
a
about
lot
this
of
all the
time.
time.
I
But
have-
I typically talk about the sex part. But yeah, how do I interact with men like the first time?
Mhm.
Well, like I just interact with a man like how I think I would be if I wasn't trans. I just interact with the man. And if we start to kind of, like last night, for example, I was at this bar and my friend was like, oh, have you met Ashley? And he's like, no. And I look and he's a handsome man. And I think he was Israeli. He was a handsome Israeli. I'm noticing that I'm vibing with some Israeli guys. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like maybe I can see if I can poke that a little bit more. But he puts on his face and he's got his charm. And I'm like, okay. And he compliments me on my glasses. And then I'm like, okay, so something's happening here. And we sit down and we start talking to each other. And then he asks me if I live here, and I say no. And then you can see him like dying inside a little bit. And his mom calls him, and then he has to go, and that's the end of the conversation. But we were kind of building a little bit of flirtation and maybe something more. And then like when I did my stand-up, I just met a guy at the 7-Eleven who I was like, you're hot. I didn't say that to him, but I was like, come with me, let's go to this festival. And he did, and we did ecstatic dance together, we talked more, we then went in the sauna, and then after the sauna, we kind of started kissing and all of that. And we had a good time together, and then I said, let's go get some food, so we got some food, and then at the table when we were eating, I told him, I said, by the way, I'm trans. And he kind of just looked at me, like for a second there, like just in my eyes, just, okay, like I just had to process that. And he said, it's not a problem, but you know, I think that's kind of where everything ended at that point. And I wouldn't have told him, or we wouldn't have even gotten that far had he have shown anything that would have made me feel unsafe. But he was like a chill guy, very easy to get along with, didn't have any kind of attitudes where I felt like there could be any violence, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, sure. I think it should be interesting or funny, I don't know what adjectives to use, to see the reactions of different men in front of this like coming out. Do
I
they
think-
react in the same way?
I think everyone reacts the same way, actually. Everyone. When I tell them I'm trans, whether they're men or women, they typically look at you a little bit longer to like process, and then they don't say anything. They don't go, oh my God. They're like, they typically are just like, and then that's kind of it. And there may be a little bit of conversation after that, but most of the time it's not much of a reaction. Yeah, I mean, I've never gotten so far as like the guy's in my bedroom and then I tell him, like it's never like that. I think the furthest I've been is I met a guy in Germany while we were like dancing outside, and we started kissing and stuff, and then he's like, well, do you want to come back to my place? And I said, well, I should tell you something before I go back to your place. I'm trans. And he's like, oh, okay. I've never been with a trans person. And I was like, well, you can try it if you want. And then we did, and it wasn't vibing for him, so we just became friends. And that's that, you know. And we actually became a really good friend, so there you go.
Also, it's cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I don't know. We should know more of this world, because I realized that I don't know
Oh, it's a whole
many
world
things.
for
It's
sure.
a
Yeah, it's a whole world. Yeah. And if you're not trans, you're not thinking about it too much.
Sure, sure. But we could watch at your videos on your YouTube channel.
Yeah,
to
you
know
could
more.
if you've got the time for it. You know.
Sure,
I should
sure.
just make a cheat
will.
sheet, like 60 seconds, trans stuff in 60 seconds. I'm sure someone's made that video. You know.
Cool. So, would you suggest to go to Thailand to chill, to I don't know, to enjoy a little bit or to chill, or?
I think if you're trans, it's like fair game to come out here. Like this is a very safe place to have just experience life and be out in public, especially if you're in a country that's not so accepting. Yeah, I think this is probably the safest place I've felt. Like I think I feel safer than in the United States or in Europe, because not only just like anti-trans stuff, it feels safe here, but I just feel safe here. Like it doesn't feel like there's any crime. It doesn't feel like you get a lot of violence or anything like that. In the United States, it's like, are you going to get shot? And then like in Germany, it's like, am I going to get beat up? I don't know. Or, you know, sexually assaulted. This it seems to be
I've
that.
heard that the acceptance here is due also to the fact that the majority of them are Buddhist, and this kind of religions or philosophy allowed more acceptance, is more acceptable towards.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You see it in the traffic because there's so much like zooming of motorcycles and cars and doing all these maneuvers, and you barely ever hear a single horn.
Sure.
You barely ever hear it. And in the United States, in LA, like people are honking their horns all the time. And I think that just kind of shows the kind of attitude here, just kind of like letting kind of things go by peacefully.
Yeah, peacefully. Live and let it be and let it be.
I mean, like Western world is like kind of driven by like Christian culture, and a lot of Christian Catholic culture is about like prosecution and like battle and fighting
and
judgment and hell and punishment and justified punishment. So I think that's definitely woven into the fabric of the culture, even though a lot of people don't practice religion now as much. So yeah, I think like adopting a little bit more of an Eastern cultural mentality might be helpful in terms of philosophically speaking. Yeah,
I agree. Not only for this part of not only for LGBT people, I think, but in general.
For everyone.
For everyone.
I mean, you see the battles, like people are fighting each other in social media, and a lot of that to me just feels like it's the new version of like Christianity. People are like having their what is it when people would go the Crusades? People are having their own crusades, but it's not about religion. It's about whether you believe this or you believe that.
It's about the ego, maybe.
Yeah, it's very ego based.
Yeah,
right. But it still kind of stems from that same crusade-like mentality of how you have to do the right thing, and if you're not doing the right thing, then you're wrong.
Yeah.
And in Eastern world, it's not about doing the right thing. So much as it is about how you are as a person doing the thing. There is less, I don't know, there's less binariness here.
Yeah, it's much more relaxed and fluid, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like this island makes it a lot easier.
Look around. It makes much more easier. Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure, a big pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
To hear and to learn, because for me it's like an open book.
Yes.
A window into a world I don't know.
Yes,
and
a whole new world.
whole new world. Fuck, how many things we don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And if you will use the video, please share it with me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will
Sure.
send it to you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. And for sure tonight I will think about our conversation and I will start thinking, fuck, why I didn't ask this question? Fuck, why I didn't realize that?
Yeah, no, that's okay. You can send me a message and I can respond
Yeah.
with a voicemail or something like that.
Yeah, sure, thanks.
I'm going to close up the video. Thank you for joining us today. And please like and subscribe and share this with your friends if you think it'd be helpful for them. See you in an episode soon. Bye.